Hello, friends. This is Mac Payne, owner and operator of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast, coming to you in this video to let you know I just published another episode of the podcast. This one is number 3200. That's right. I've introduced this podcast 3,200 times over the last 12 years. It's been a lot of fun. Very educational to me and hopefully the listeners. I find the topic of this episode in the podcast today very interesting because it has to do with music from the Vietnam War era. I saw a story on the Far Out magazine that talked about the influence of music on the Vietnam War. There was a story in there by Ben Forrest, who had interviewed Mr. John Fogerty. He is the lead singer for the Creedence Clearwater Revival. Very famous. Apparently, John is very fond of Bob Dylan and his writings. We all know Bob Dylan. He was the subject of the story they were talking about. The theory is Bob Dylan ended the Vietnam War with his music. Now, as I stated in the podcast, I want everybody to know up front that I am a big Bob Dylan fan. I've been to 3 of his concerts, more than any other. He always puts on a good show. Bob Dylan is more than just some funny little guy from Minnesota who likes to sing. He's extremely talented, and I've always enjoyed his music. But what John Fogerty is trying to say is that Bob Dylan's music ended the Vietnam War. Now, I don't think I'm going to go that far. He might have had some influence on it, but there are a lot of other factors involved in that situation, besides Bob Dylan's music. But the story about all this is very interesting, I believe. That's why I am encouraging you to go over to the podcast website, vietnamveterannews.com, and listen to episode 3200, where I share the story with you, and you'll have to decide on your own. Did Bob Dylan end the Vietnam War? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I would appreciate your comments over at the podcast website, vietnamveterannews.com. Go in there and tell me if you think Bob Dylan ended the Vietnam War or if it's all BS. I'd like to hear it. Being a Bob Dylan fan, I've made it easy for you to go over to the podcast and hear this episode. All you've got to do is go down below this Philco TV set and click on the link to the Vietnam Veteran News. It'll take you right to the episode. But wait, there is more. When you go down below this TV set to click on that link over to the podcast, right above that link will be a link to something called Buy Me a Coffee. And I'll be honest up front, that is a blatant request for support for this podcast. Over the last 12 years, I have paid almost all the expenses to keep this podcast on the air. So I'm asking that if you like what you hear, or you want to support a poor old Vietnam veteran, buy me a cup. You can buy me 2 cups if you like. I wouldn't even mind if you bought me 500 cups. Whatever you feel like doing, I'd greatly appreciate it. So without any further ado, go down below this TV set, click on the link to buy me a coffee, and then click on the link to go over to the podcast website and look at episode 3200 about where it is debated whether or not Bob Dylan helped end the Vietnam War. I think you will find it as interesting as I did, especially if you're a fan of the Creedence Clearwater Revival or Bob Dylan himself. So again, do yourself a favor and go click on it, watch it, and let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon.